Alright, so I thought I'd chronicle this little project. My son had bought my granddaughter a used four-wheeler for her birthday last month, or this month. And it ran. It started right up and run, but it didn't run right. And I didn't actually run it to say exactly how it ran. I just fired it up once and shut her back down. But I started out just checking. I was going to do a compression check, but then I had the engine, the top of the engine was exposed, and I went ahead and put some bubbles around the head gasket. And it blew bubbles just cranking it over with no spark, and so I figured, okay, head gasket. So I pulled the head off, and cylinder wasn't bad. Piston and cylinder looked decent. You could tell it had been run for a while, but so we just decided to go ahead and do a top end kit. And so he ordered a kit. It's about like $100, and you get a new head, piston, wrist pin, the wrist pin bearing, the rod bearing comes with it. But you also get a new intake boot, and this aluminum reed housing with what looks like metal reeds, look like aluminum reeds. So I'm not sure about those. It's just been a lot of years, but I used to do a lot of two-stroke stuff. The old one has some carbon fiber reeds on it, and these are really easy to pop out and change. So I'm probably just going to go ahead and put the new ones in and let it rip and see what happens. Most likely, I would guess these would wear out faster. I think carbon fiber is considered to be a better material for this purpose. But so the old housing is plastic. This comes with aluminum housing. Get all the gaskets: base gasket, intake boot gasket, exhaust gasket. The rings are in there. Of course, the head gasket. And I really like the looks of the head gasket. I haven't pulled it out yet, but it just looks like really thin aluminum. So I'm not real happy with that. It actually looks like there might be some damage right there. And I'm like, ugh. The old gasket was a copper gasket. So I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do when I get to that point. So what I did is I ended up pulling the motor out just because it's just easier to work on. And in reality, I really needed to clean this out. So the crankcase is pretty small in there. It's really simple. You just have a case with the crank bearings on the side. You can actually see the bearings. You can move this around. See the bearings through holes in the crank. Not really lobes, but so I went ahead and cleaned that out with carb cleaner and flushed it really well, and then shot some two-stroke oil in there, and basically getting ready to put this back together. But just for anybody who's messing with these, this is what is it called? It's an off-brand, in my opinion. Eton Viper 90R, and I guess these parts fit Polaris as well. So apparently it's a side brand of Polaris or whatever. But anyway, the parts are super cheap. They're obviously China made, but just looking at the cylinder, there are some differences where you can see right here the skirt has a kind of a curved shape to it. The old one has more of a squared off. It's possible, someone did some work to this. Who knows? Maybe this is the original and this is just a cheap. But, it's possible someone bought something aftermarket. It's supposed to be higher performance. You can see here, This cutout here is considerably smaller than this one. And also on the exhaust port, you've got more of an oval exhaust port here, which is clearly smaller, and more of a round one here, which is clearly bigger. So, it looks like the parts that were in it, were made possibly for a bigger, bore or whatever than this. And I don't know. I don't think this, I didn't put a mic on it, but I'm pretty sure they're pretty much the same. So this is a 90 kit. I believe it's a 90cc cylinder, so either the original was more free-flowing, someone modified it, or somebody put some more free-flowing aftermarket parts on it since it was new, which is very possible. But so anyway, getting ready to put this back together. We'll see how it's probably better to do it than to put it together with the gasket and just hope for the best. I was able to find a guy in line that was rebuilding a 50 or 70, something like that, and he said the head torque was 19 Newton meters. So I'm gonna have to look that up, and it may very well be on my torque wrench, but whatever that is, it's pretty light torque. Otherwise you can warp or crack the head. So we'll get to work and see how it turns out. All right, so where I'm at with this little guy is got the crankcase flushed out real good, lubed up the bearings, cleaned up the base gasket surface on the engine case. I went ahead and put a little bit of red Loctite on the cylinder studs, because I had one come out with the head nut, and I thought, well, I prefer to get the head nut off, not the, basically just want it to hold its position and not loosen up. So cleaned them out with brake parts cleaner, the holes in the threads, cleaned up the threads on all the studs, made sure they're clean and dry. Because when you torque it, you need good surface on your threads to get the proper torque. And I may put a dab of red Loctite on the head nuts. I don't know. There's not a whole lot there to keep them from loosening up. But anyway, so on the head gasket, the one they sent was this right here. And as you can see, it's dinged and dented, pretty crappy shape. And it was in with some other gaskets of, a paper type gasket. But so I thought, and this is really thin, just crap aluminum. So it's like, well, just about any case, I can't figure out how to make that work well. So I went ahead, and the old gasket, being a copper gasket, I went ahead and brushed and cleaned it with brake parts cleaner to get oils out of it. And then I set it on the vise with this aluminum plate and heated it up to the point where, oxidation, is basically glowing red. Heated the plate first and then moved the torch up onto the gasket just to expand the metal. But as you can see, there's imperfections in that, dings and so on. So the plan here is to use this copper spray gasket, which I've never used before. But I did watch a YouTube video where a guy was saying this is a good way to do it if you're going to repurpose the gasket. So I'm going to see how this works out, and hopefully it will. But we'll check for leaks on the gasket, after the motor's installed. Crank it over at least and build some cylinder pressure, take a compression test, and check for leaks on the gasket. But anyway, so that's the plan for that. Now I'm going to check the surface from the head to the cylinder. Looks good and flush. Like the machining's good there. There's no gaps that I could see, uneven gaps in the surfaces. So cylinder I was gonna hone, I just can't find a proper hone, and I don't really think it needs it. I cleaned it up, looked at the cylinder, and it looks like it's honed well enough. I just want to make sure there's no burrs on any of the holes in there, and I don't believe there is at this point. So I went ahead and installed the piston in the cylinder. So what I'm going to do is take the base gasket and use black RTV type gasket maker type stuff, and just finger on a thin coating on the gasket material itself. I've cleaned this surface by brushing and using brake parts cleaner, but also I'm going to put a little heat to it. I already have, so it's not too awful cold, but I'll put a little more heat to it just to make sure it's warm when I put it together. The idea is we want a little less moisture in the metal for when the gasket material to bond into the pores better and make a good permanent seal. So I've done the same with the base of the cylinder where it's going to make contact. Heated this up a little bit. It's warm right now, and then made sure there's no oily films on these. Brushed them with a stainless steel brush using brake cleaner, and then wiped them with a clean rag until I got no more residue off of them. So those are clean, ready to go. So the idea here is to put the base gasket on. Go ahead and slip this on, and then install the wrist pin bearing, and slip the wrist pin inside, put the ring back in, slip it together, and then I'll go ahead and put this gasket on with this stuff and torque the head down. It's 19 Newton meters. I think I've got a Newton meter scale on my little torque wrench. So I'll get that done. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull the side off and just inspect the belt, see what's going on in there. Maybe look at the kick start mechanisms. I've got a bag full of them. They've been removed. I don't know how, I don't have the lever itself, so I don't know if installing the other parts internally will do any good anyway. But just kind of want to make sure that it wasn't a crappy belt that was going to end up breaking on them or something. So check the fluid in the transmission. It looks good. So not too worried about that. And then we're going to go through all the electrical connections and clean them before they go back together. And I don't know where it is, but I've got it here somewhere. So I picked up a tube of dielectric grease. I'm going to grease all the electric fittings, clean them, put them back together, and then go ahead and install it back in. But first, I think I'm going to take this outside and just get a bucket of hot water, soapy hot water, and just clean the frame, clean the wiring harnesses. Basically, just try and put it back together, clean, get the majority of the oily dirt off the bottom of the frame, just to have a good starting point, and see how it goes. All right, so by the end of the weekend, got this all together. Obviously, cleaned everything up. Just took the motor out and soap and watered it and cleaned all the dirt and grease and all that. But that oil pump down here for the two-stroke oil, let's see if I can get a block-off plate for that and just get rid of it. But the issue I'm running into now is I have two carbs, one that was on it, and he got another one just in bag with parts, and someone's obviously been buying extra parts for this before he got it. But essentially clean out the carburetor and all that. A couple things I didn't like is there's no seals for these shafts that screw into the side of the carburetor, adjustment screws. And I don't know if that's normal for these or not. I would typically look to have them, but other than that, the jets are the same, and I believe they're probably stock for the 90cc. So I get the numbers off. I need to try and do some research. But essentially, if you're not going to pump the oil in, you're adding it to your fuel, that increases the viscosity and makes the requirement different for the jets. So I've got some jet drills that I might be able to use. I want to do a little research. I might just open them up a little bit, because these jets are designed just to run straight fuel through. The oil injection, this carburetor is not set up for it, but this is the port. I think this is the original carburetor, and this is where the oil injection was hooked up to. So this is after the fuel and air mixture is done back inside there, on the intake side of the carburetor. So they're putting the oil in after they mix it. So basically, with the added viscosity, you just need to figure out, what jet should be ran. There's not a lot of information out there for these that I found, so I may just end up drilling them out just a little bit and seeing how that goes. The other thing is this thing's missing the shroud that goes around this here, and I believe there was probably plastic from what I can tell, but something that bolted onto here and down at the bottom. And I'm pretty sure this was probably shrouded. It looks like these were probably a couple of the other mounting screws for whatever that was. So it appears that the airflow for this is probably designed to go across and down and exhaust out the bottom. As you can see, the fins are the widest right there. So don't really like running it that way. Of course, I could make something out of aluminum probably. I could mount on there. Just take some of my aluminum sheeting and essentially make a shroud. It may not be all that pretty, but it'd be better than nothing. And just maybe bend the edge and have a piece that comes out and just at least goes over to here and direct some of that airflow across that cylinder. Be better than nothing. So probably next weekend I'm going to be working on that. Should get the bike back together and running. Drill out the jets. I don't have the drills here, so and then give it a go from there. And that twist throttle kit didn't fit. The cable wasn't long enough for this carburetor. It wouldn't go all the way through that tube and far enough down in to connect. It'd barely just make it to the end of this right there. So that cable just wasn't right for this carburetor. Otherwise, would have used it. So for now, I'll be stuck with that old dual cable, which, as far as I can tell, works. It's a thumb throttle, and for little kids, kind of wears out their thumbs. So my kids had the same issue when they were young. But anyway, that's it for now.
Waiting for him. Ready? Cheeseburger! Cheeseburger! Awesome! Not gonna get out of the way. Hang on.
Okay, I'm hanging. Back end goes to the left. There you go. There you go. Man, you're scaring me.
Hang on very well now.
Okay.
Don't scream in my ear like that. Now get ready for a sharp turn.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
off of this thing.
I want to ride, but don't go that fast.